Chapter 1.4 is all on properties of real numbers. Before we get started, I want to talk about some of those properties. The first one is closure property. Real numbers are closed under addition, which means that if you add two real numbers, you'll get a real number. And they're closed under multiplication, which means if you multiply two real numbers, you'll get a real number. Real numbers are commutative under addition, which means that if you add A and B, it's the same thing as if you had added B and A. And they're commutative under multiplication, which means if you multiply A and B, it's the same thing as if you multiplied B times A. Real numbers are also associative under addition, which means you can change the grouping of B plus, as long as you're only adding, you can add B and C together first, or you can add A and B together first. It doesn't matter. Same thing with multiplication. There's also the identity property of addition, which means that if you add 0 to a number, you'll get that number. Or if you multiply a number by 1, you'll get that number. That's under multiplication. Then there's the inverse property of addition, which means if you add opposites, you get 0. And the inverse property of multiplication, which means if you multiply reciprocals, you get 1. The 0 property of multiplication means that anything times 0 equals 0. You should already know that. And the multiplication property of -1 means that if you multiply anything by -1, you get its opposite. For example, 3 times -1 is -3, while -4 times -1 is +4. Okay, so let's identify those properties again. If you need to, go back to that last slide. I know I didn't stay on it very long, but if you need to, you can always rewind to that last slide and look at those properties again. Okay, so I multiplied by 0. That is going to be the 0 property of multiplication. 0 prop of mult. Okay, for B, I changed my groups and I'm adding. So you see I'm adding and I'm changing my groups. So that's going to be the associative property of addition. And then C, I've got 10x plus 0 gives me 10x. That's going to be the identity, let's call it the additive identity. Okay, try guided practice number 1 on your own. If you need to, go back and look at the last slide and look at the properties again, but I'm sure you can figure out which property is shown by each. Okay, for the first one, I'm multiplying by 1 and I'm not changing the value. So I'm not changing the identity. So that's going to be the multiplicative identity. B, I'm adding and I'm changing the order of the group. I know there's groups and you think associative, but you've got square root first and then you've got last in the second one. So that's actually going to be the commutative property of addition. All right, example 2. They want you to use the properties for mental calculations. The movie ticket costs $7.75, the drink costs $2.40, and the popcorn costs $1.25. What is the total cost of the ticket? I want you to use mental math. When you're adding money, you want to add to get whole numbers. So if you'll notice, you've got $7.75 and $1.25. If you add a quarter to 75 cents, you get a whole dollar. So add those first. So the 75 cents plus the quarter gives you $1. So that's going to be $8 plus another dollar is $9. Plus the $2.40 is going to give you $11.40. If you had tried to add this and this first, you would have had to carry and all kinds of stuff. So always try to do the simplest way you can. Look for shortcuts. Guided practice number 2. A can holds 3 tennis balls. A box holds 4 cans. A case holds 6 boxes. How many tennis balls are in 10 cases? So, you've got 10 cases times 6 boxes times 4 cans times 3 tennis balls, and you need to figure out how much that is. So I want you to try to figure out the best route to multiply those so that you don't have to pick up a calculator. Pause the video and then I'll give you the answer in just a second. Alright, so I've got 3 times 4 times 6 times 10. Well, 6 times 10 is easy, so we'll just go ahead and do that and make it 60. 3 times 4 is 12. If you do 12 times 60, you just have to do 12 times 6, which is 72, and then add a 0. So 720 tennis balls. And I never had to pick up a calculator. Okay, now let's write equivalent expressions, which means you're going to use all of those properties to rewrite this so that it's simpler. So A, you've got 5 times 3n. You can go ahead and multiply the 5 and the 3 and get 15n because of the associative property of multiplication. B, you can regroup this so it's 7b plus 4 plus 8 because of the associative property and the commutative property of addition and get 7b plus 12. C, let's cancel those y's. That is the inverse property of multiplication, and then you get 6x. It's y divided by y. Okay, pause the video and try A, B, and C on your own, and I'll give you the answers in just a second. Okay, A is going to be 9.45 x. B is going to be 6 plus 3 gives you 9, so we'll do 4h plus 9. And then C, you can cancel the m's and you can cancel 8 over 12 and you get 2 over 3n. Alright, so the vocabulary at the bottom. Something is the process of reasoning logically from the given facts. You deduce something this way, and that is with deductive reasoning. Sherlock Holmes was the king of deductive reasoning. Blank is an example showing that a statement is false. That's a counterexample. The opposite of it would show you that it's false. Okay, last slide. Use deductive reasoning and counterexamples to prove whether something's true or false. So, A says that if I multiply two numbers, that's the same thing as if I added the same two numbers. So, let's say that I chose 2 and 3. 2 times 3 is 6, but 3 plus 2 is 5. So that's false, and that to my left there is my counterexample. B, it says that if I add two numbers like A and B together first, that's the same thing as if I added the two numbers A and C first. So let's give them numbers. 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 2 plus 1 plus 3. Well, that's 3 plus 3, which is 6. And that's 2 plus 4, which is 6, so that's true. Just because you get something that's true doesn't mean that it's always true, so you need to try it again. But this is definitely true because this is actually the commutative. The associative property of addition. It's actually both the commutative and associative properties. Okay, guided practice number 4. I want you to pause the video and try these on your own, and then I'll show you the answer in just a second. Alright, that's going to be true. Because that is the additive identity, and then B is going to be false. Your counterexample may be different than mine, but let's say that M was 4, N was 2, 4 times 3 is 12, where 8 plus 1 is 9, so that's not true. So that's your counterexample. Alright, got it. I need you to do this on a separate sheet of paper to be turned in tomorrow. You have to give me an answer for every question. Writing down the question does not count, and if your answers are the exact same as someone else's, it looks suspicious.